Welcome everyone, it is 3 pm and it's time for the Server Room Show. This is episode 35. If everything goes okay and I manage to set up everything correctly, this episode now should be live streaming on Unknown Radio and also on Tilde Radio. So let's hope that it works on both radio. And welcome to the Fediverse of the Tilde people. Today we continue the previous episode, which was episode 34, which went from recording about emulating Forgotten Realms. So this is part 2 of that. In part 1 we talked about PCem and 86box, DOSBOX, a bit of Qemu, and some of the Macintosh emulators like Basilisk and Shipshaver, and I left it just before to talk about Mini VMac. Mini VMac is similar to Basilisk 2 and can run classic 68K Mac operating systems and applications. It emulates Macintosh Plus. I left a very good video in the show notes which explains how to set it up. It's nicely detailed, and in the show notes you can find a screenshot, for example, where Mini VMac is running System Software 755. Another emulation when it comes to the Macintosh could be PC. It's a PowerPC emulator. What it emulates is similar to a PowerMac G4, but about around 500 times slower than the original hardware. You can use it to run newer than classic macOS operating systems, the ones which were compatible with PowerMac G4, for example, like macOS 10.2.8 Jaguar. As per the website, both the website of PeerPC, both OpenBSD and NetBSD for PowerPC build crashes on boot, and it is sad because I would have liked to try those one out. Probably I should give it a try. Perhaps newer builds of both of these BSD systems maybe boot if we are anything than lucky. Another emulation could be, which probably many of you know, when or if you are interested in legacy systems like DECWAX, PDP, HP 3000, Series 3, just to mention a few. That would be CMage. That is pretty much the mecca when it comes to these legacy systems. Definitely it could worth its own episode talking about just CMage, and it would worth its own episode just like talking about mainframes. There is a lot of tons of videos and tutorials how to run different operating systems on various architectures or hardwares emulated by CMage. You can Google around and you can find a plethora of tutorials or videos how to set different hardwares and systems up and running in CMage with networking and with all you need, together with files ready to work with CMage, like tape files prepared to work with CMage emulator. I added one of my favorite YouTube channels link regarding this topic of CMage and actually OpenVMS, which is Steven's Machine Room, which has a great step-by-step instructions for CMage and OpenVMS installation, and also explains how to add the HP OpenVMS hobbyist license keys. But remember the sad truth that it will be over on 2021 December 31st. HP as OpenVMS has been transferred to another organization. They seize the OpenVMS hobbyist program, which was running for a long time, and all it needed that you registered your interest through a web form, labeling the architectures you needed to run OpenVMS on, and you got a license key which included hobbyist license keys, which included everything. And you also got access to the installation ISOs for various architectures like the Itanium or the VAX itself, and you could run it in your CMage or other emulator or even real hardware. It was for hobbyists, not for corporations. So just to be clear, nice screenshot again in the show notes showing CMage running VAX VMS version 4.7. The show notes for this episode really turned out great, so it's worth to dive into those links and see what's going on. Was looking at my screen. I'm trying to get confirmation if anyone can hear me, because I mean on Tilde Radio, because I know that on Anon Radio you guys can hear me, because that config is and was the same. Nothing has changed there, but I'm slightly afraid that even I see myself on air on Tilde Radio, I'm not sure that I am actually. I don't know if anyone can hear me. But anyway, to continue, another one on the list, popular software for virtualization is VirtualBox. And why is it on this list of these special systems or forgotten systems, so to say? I don't know how to refer to this, because normally when you think at VirtualBox, you mostly see it as an alternative to VMware, which is a paid virtualization software, whereas VirtualBox, now owned by Oracle, is free, and normally people just look at it as an alternative to VMware. However, the reason being why is it here on my list today is that apart from being free, it can be great when it comes to older but not so old operating systems like MS-DOS, OS2, even AIX 1.3 for the PS2, which I mentioned in the previous episode when I talked about PCem 86box, and even Windows NT or Windows 3.11. And the reason being that all these mentioned systems, they don't really run very successfully under VMware, but for whatever reason I always had more success and joy, and also other people who documented their steps with this operating system in question under VirtualBox. So sometimes it's as a great alternative to VMware Workstation, which is a paid application, as I mentioned. If some older operating system does not install or work properly under VMware, perhaps give it a try under VirtualBox and you might get lucky. The AIX 1.3, which originally was for the IBM PS2 hardware, I left a link in the show notes where you can grab some patched floppies and even patched both floppies and the prepared hard drive for VirtualBox, and you can just boot into AIX 1.3, and it's great fun, because when I was trying to make it work in PCem and 86Vox, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I was not able to make it run. But in VirtualBox, with this prepared hard drive and the patched boot floppy, I was able to have it up and running. And OS2 works very well on VirtualBox. So if you feel like running some IBM OS2 warp, then feel free to try VirtualBox out. It exists for pretty much all the operating systems out there, so for sure you can grab a copy for free, and why not. As I mentioned, I linked to the show notes the video and the boot and install hard drive about the X13 with networking on VirtualBox, and I had pretty great success with it. You can also read about on the link I left for the astrobaby.wordpress.com blog, because that's where I got the VirtualBox VDI HDD and image floppies to make this work on VirtualBox. Just give me a second. Because I try to get confirmation if my stream is okay, but no one seems to say much. So to continue, let's go to another big one. Which is Hercules emulator, and honestly, Hercules is just as big and just as much worth its own episode on its own than CMage itself, because and that's why I mentioned that mainframe is worth also their own episode, just like CMage. When it comes to Hercules, it's another very awesome emulator, which this time emulating Big Iron from IBM. What does it mean? Hercules is an open source software implementation of the mainframe system /370 and ESA 390 architectures, in addition to the latest 64-bit Z architecture. Hercules runs under Linux, Windows, Solaris, FreeBSD, and macOS 10. Thank you very much, Ben, the black cat, and the owner, who is Claudio. They confirmed that no matter what I see on Tilde Radio's website about my stream being offline, they can hear me just fine. I think they listening for me on two different radios. I think Ben the cat listens to Tilde Radio, and Claudio perhaps is still listening to me on radio. So now that's confirmed, which is a good thing, so thank you guys. I left in the show notes my favorite mainframe related YouTube channel, which in this case is, I hope I pronounce it correctly, it's Moshix with an H in the middle. He has an incredible amount of videos about mainframes. He is very deep in mainframes, and he has a great wealth of knowledge when it comes to the topic. And watching his videos, you can not just learn how to set up Hercules emulator with a couple of offerings for free to emulate a mainframe, because remember to run IBM ZOS on Hercules, you need authorization, and pretty much you're not gonna get it, because IBM will only authorize their ZOS operating system to be run on IBM hardware, and Hercules is not IBM hardware. So, but there are other offerings like TK4 and some other things you can run on Hercules legally. And if you want to run things illegally, then sure, no problem. You can Google around and you can find some quite old IBM ZOS installation packages, or I don't know how to refer to them, and it runs just fine. So as I said, even if you don't want to go down that road, you can learn incredibly lot from Moshix's YouTube channel and about Hercules emulation and mainframes in general. And actually one book I have, I think next to me here, is a book I bought about mainframes, which is I think it's called What the Heck is a Mainframe? Just give me a second, let me see that. No, that's not my mainframe books next to me. Just 1 second. What the heck is a mainframe? Today's episode seems to be too much interactive. Normally I'm not moving around this much when doing the show. I normally just sit on my ass and talk. But I thought that I had the book next to me. I will link it to the show notes. It's a nice book which introduces you to mainframes in a not very technical details or technical terms, but it's great to start out and to get to grasp a little bit the concept, to see how completely different it is from other architectures or the other computers in general. So yeah, Moshix's channel is great on YouTube when it comes to mainframes. There is also an additional printing application which exists to do what we discussed above in the previous episode for DOSBOX, to be able to handle printing under or from Hercules emulator and the emulated mainframe system. Also a paid application, just like Printfill was when we mentioned about in DOSBOX or for DOSBOX. And the thing is, it worth every penny, so to say, because it works beautifully and completes the experience that you can take your printouts from your emulated mainframe system like TK4, and it's great fun. So now we spoke about these free or many times free and open source options when it comes to emulating all these Forgotten Realms. I don't know why I called it Forgotten Realms, but I did. So now let's go and talk about some commercial offerings, because as I mentioned in episode 34, the previous episode, part 1 of this one, there is, as you saw, when it came to DOSBOX and its variants, the reason being for all these things still being around is that there is still a big demand mostly from corporations to keep these legacy systems or architectures alive, because most of the time the reason being that companies they invested into the architecture, and it turned out to and the operating system and the application running on it, that they invested into the systems, and being today the day which is, it still works for those purpose or those tasks they tend to use it for when they got implemented. For example, I did mention OpenVMS. OpenVMS is still up and running, and surprising, but a lot of companies using it. Those applications also, many companies use legacy DOS applications to do those 2-3 things, or even more complicated things. The reason being because it works. So what works, don't fix it. Don't try to fix it. And probably to switching to some more modern architecture like x86 or something Linux based. Maybe it would be a mammoth undertaking for them, or it would be a lot of money. And as my friend Ben, the black cat, is asking on the chat, OpenVMS was never freely available. It's funny because they have open in the name, but no. The only option which actually you guys still have is the one what I mentioned, that until 2021 31st of December the OpenVMS hobbyist licenses are still alive or available to be requested. So you just go to that HP website and register yourself completely free, and you get an email response in a short while, and it gives you your access to download the ISO and your hobbyist license, and it even explains how to apply those licenses into the installed system. Or you can just Google around, and I think in the videos I mentioned of Steven's machine room on YouTube, it explains perfectly fine from scratch how to install OpenVMS on, I think he explains it on a CMage VEX system, installing OpenVMS and even applying the OpenVMS hobbyist licenses. The only thing that for that, if you still wanna give a run for that one, you have to have register yourself to this affiliation. What was the name? This Qemu or Qemu? 1 second, let me check. It asks on the form. OpenVMS. I don't remember the name. It asks for your 1 second. It asks for your participating chapter membership, so I had to go and register for free to Decus or Connect/Encompass, which gives you a membership number completely free, and that number you need to enter in the OpenVMS hobbyist registration, so you can still take advantage of this. And just remember that 2021 31st of December is a sad day, because this whole thing is finished. It's too bad, because as I mentioned, it's pretty much still a live system, and patches are coming out for it, and the new organization which took over OpenVMS from HP is 1 second. Today I move a lot, and I normally don't move this much. I'm normally sitting on my ass, as I said. VMS software, is that the one? Yeah, I think these are the guys. vmssoftware.com. I think those are the guys, if I remember correctly, who took over from HP the whole shenanigan of OpenVMS. And actually, they are on the way to port it to x86. And all I know about that, the porting to x86 architecture, is that they are working close with clients, obviously, who paid a lot of money, and they make their systems up and running in under a VirtualBox virtual machine, and they make sure that all their applications works without a lot of hassle, as it's the whole architecture, underlying architecture changed. So I will leave that link to the show note, and also the registration for OpenVMS. So the commercial offerings for all these legacy systems we mentioned, the first one would be MUVM, or Alpha VM it used to be called. It's emulating an alpha system. It used to be free, MUVM, not anymore. Now they charge as for a hobbyist license, or so to say, their Alpha VM Basic, they charge 400 euros plus an annual prolongation cost afterwards for 100 euros. So yeah, not really hobbyist friendly. They used to have MUVM for free, so I have the last version saved if someone is interested. It is perfectly fine and still works no matter what, being old. It's just slow a little bit. So obviously if you pay, you get more speed and more RAM and more everything. Then there are my favorite contenders of greediness, the Swiss-based Stormasis Charon. Those guys hold the holy grail for everything when it comes to legacy systems emulation. They have HP 3000 SunSpark, both 32 and 64-bit Alpha architecture VAX. So yeah, these guys cover nearly everything. The fun is that they charge according to it, as I already talked about it in one of my earlier episodes. I told about it, and yeah, they hold the holy grail when it comes to that. I detailed it out in the show notes a little bit about them. And then there is another one which many people don't know. As we mentioned, the Hercules emulator and mainframes and IBM ZOS. IBM has its own ZPDT, which is IBM System Z Personal Development Tool. I never saw it live. I saw only a YouTube video about it, which I linked into the show notes. The whole thing is tons of software plus a USB hardware key, which is the one which cost money. Nice amount of money, around 8 to 9,000 euros, the license fee. It is intended for ZOS developers, and what you can do is, with the USB hardware key and all the tons of software you get, pretty much you get everything of or for IBM ZOS, and the latest version of the operating system, all the applications, extras, IBM database, whatever you want, and you can run it on under Linux with this hardware key, which you have to renew every year. So imagine it like Hercules being on steroids, with all the latest and greatest from IBM ZOS, application-wise, working together seamlessly under Linux and with as much performance as your workstation can give it. So I never managed to get my hands on it, even though I had some contacts in IBM, but these things are very, very, very well hidden, even in between IBM's walls, so to say. So our time is up. I have 30 seconds left. I hope that my little troubling on and around the show didn't cause too much problems, because I was trying to get a confirmation that the signal went through to Tilde Radio folks as well, because I really wanted to have those guys to have a feel of what this show sounds like. And see you next Saturday, I guess. Take care, guys.